Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tearing into a philosophical deep dive that takes a concept we all think we know and just spins it completely on its head. We're starting with a word that seems simple, but, well, it gets impossible very fast. Hierarchy.
And if I asked you right now, what's the opposite of a hierarchy, you'd probably have an answer ready.
Oh, yeah, immediately, heterarchy.
Heterarchy. It's the default, isn't it? A
Yeah.
structure without a top-down command, where everything is unranked, all on the same level.
Exactly. But the source material we're looking at today, it's an analysis of a philosophical reflection. It
Yeah.
challenges the very logic of that opposition.
And it's written with this almost playful irony. It's self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
And that's deliberate, because the author wants to show you just how difficult it is to think about non-hierarchical structures without immediately falling back into hierarchical terms.
Right.
The monologue that the source analyzes, it sets this tone perfectly. The speaker literally opens by refusing to name the previous topic of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
He just calls it dadaloo or, some other nonsense placeholder.
Which is a signal right out of the gate.
It's an immediate signal. We are rejecting rigid names, fixed definitions from the very beginning.
So our mission for this deep dive is to tackle this really unexpected problem. How can heterarchy be the opposite of hierarchy if the idea of an opposite requires the two things to be comparable in the first place?
We're questioning the conceptual space they share, or maybe the space they don't share.
It's about moving beyond just swapping in a word like chaos or flatness.
Yeah. This is about rethinking the actual tools we use to understand structure itself.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with that fundamental trap, this famous Western habit of thinking in opposites.
Right.
When we think of a hierarchy, it's clear. We see an org chart, a chain of command. It's the default.
Our brains just love a good binary opposition.
Hmm.
Light and dark, hot and cold.
Exactly, and that's helpful because those concepts are comparable. Hot and cold are opposites, yes, but they both exist on a single measurable line, right? The line of temperature. They share a common metric.
And that comparability is everything. It's the linchpin. If two things are true opposites, they have to share that conceptual ground. Now, here's where the source makes its really powerful, kind of mind-bending claim.
Okay.
Heterarchy, by its very definition, is supposed to be non-hierarchical.
Okay, so if it's truly non-hierarchical, then it must exist outside of the measurement system that hierarchy uses.
Precisely. It fundamentally excludes any kind of comparability.
Yeah.
I mean, if a hierarchy really has no predefined structure, how can we use structural logic to measure it against a structure like hierarchy?
The moment you try to compare them, to ask which one is better or stronger, you're already imposing a structure.
You're imposing the very relationship that the heterarchy is meant to escape.
Wait, hold on, I have to challenge that. Doesn't this just sound like a semantic trick? If I define A as structured and B as non-structured, haven't I just created a new hierarchy where structure is the main category and B is just the absence of it?
That is exactly the trap the source is identifying. And the text uses this great phrase for it. It calls it the famously infamous habit of thinking in opposites, embedded in what they call Ebenländisches Denken.
Which just means Western thinking.
Yeah, or Occidental thinking.
Yeah.
The idea that our whole intellectual tradition is sort of biased toward comparison and structure.
So the source argues that if you try to understand a true heterarchy with our standard logical tools of hierarchy, what you get is
Conceptual nothing.
nothing.
You don't get its opposite, you just get a dead end. Because the very attempt to define it, to name it, to oppose it, that automatically imposes the rigid structure the concept is supposed to avoid.
That's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
It means our very language, the logic we use for arguments, it might just be incapable of dealing with a genuinely fluid, non-fixed reality.
The second we name it, we start to dominate it.
So if we can't hold them side by side as opposites, then what is their relationship? The static view just fails.
We're left with a vacuum. So how does the source propose we fill that void?
This is where it gets really interesting. We have to make a mental shift from a static opposition to a dynamic, continuous process.
The material suggests that hierarchy and heterarchy are not these fixed opposing systems, not at all.
No.
They're two different moments, or maybe stages in a continuous flow. They're related by movement, not by opposition.
And here's the single most crucial insight, the one thing you need to take away from this. Hierarchy is not the opposite of heterarchy. It's the product of heterarchical processes.
Think of it like water and ice. Ice, the hierarchy, isn't the opposite of water, the heterarchy.
No.
It's the crystallized state that water achieves when conditions change. The structure emerges from the fluid openness.
That is a profound reversal. We usually think structure has to be imposed first to control the chaos, but here the structure is just a snapshot, a solidified moment from a once fluid conversation.
And the source uses a brilliant, simple anecdote to illustrate this, the process of a small, lively discussion. We can walk through the 3 stages because this really makes the abstract feel concrete.
All right, so imagine stage 1, the beginning of a genuinely open discussion. This is the pure heterarchical state.
Ideas are flying, people are interrupting each other, opinions are shifting as new points are made.
Positions are incredibly fluid. No one is totally sure what the other person means, and maybe you're not even sure of your own position yet.
It's provisional, it's dialogical. There's genuine mutual transformation happening. And crucially, there is no fixed authority, no interpretive dominance. It's a mess of crisscrossing lines.
But that openness is, well, it's hard to maintain, isn't it? It can be exhausting. Our human need for clarity, for a conclusion, starts to kick in.
Exactly. And that leads us to stage 2, the transition. As the conversation goes on, the relationship changes. Clarity starts to emerge. Someone says, oh, I see what you mean now.
Right, or, okay, my position on X is definitely Y. Viewpoints begin to stabilize. The fluidity starts to congeal.
The mutual transformative dance slows down. Definitions become fixed, known. The conceptual movement is lost.
And that hardening leads us, inevitably, to stage 3.
The resultant structure, the hierarchy, the stabilization of meaning, the formation of consensus, or even just the crystallization of a disagreement that inherently creates a structure.
And that structure might not be a CEO in an office, but it's a hierarchy all the same. It could be interpretive dominance, like we finally all agree on what the word innovation means.
And now that fixed meaning dominates all future conversations.
Or it could be a power relationship that crystallizes based on who was best at defining the terms in the first place.
The essential point, the insight that changes everything for you, is that the hierarchy did not exist when the discussion began. It was produced by the open process itself, the moment that openness solidified into clarity.
So you can't grasp heterarchy using hierarchical logic because heterarchy is the unstable, dynamic condition that's necessary for the hierarchy to even appear later on.
Which means if we accept this, then maintaining an open, provisional state dwelling in the heterarchy requires constant conscious effort. You have to resist that natural pull toward fixed meaning.
And this brings us right to the source's critique of fixity and why that original monologue was delivered with such a peculiar style.
Right, this philosophical reflection takes this humorous but very sharp swipe at what the source calls the estists.
The S?
Ideological thinkers, people rigidly tied to their esthetisms like structuralists, reductionists, what have you.
It's a great critique of intellectual authority.
It's marvelous.
Yeah.
The source notes that these Issener, these ideological thinkers, they place this striking importance on being called by their first names.
They want fixed labels, clear ideological identities. They want the personal authority that comes from being able to define things cleanly.
That desire for a first name, for that fixed label, that is the impulse toward hierarchy itself, isn't it? It's planting a flag and declaring, this is what I am and this is what this means.
A refusal to dwell in ambiguity.
Exactly. And the source rejects this. It prefers ambiguity and mutual transformation because that ambiguity is a necessary defense against premature closure.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the societal so what? Well, it's huge. This isn't just about defining terms. It's about how social power or Herrschaft emerges.
Herrschaft. It translates roughly to dominance, rule, fixed authority. And the analysis suggests that this dominance doesn't just come from some external imposed structure like a king giving an order.
No, it arises from the solidification of meaning within open communication.
So when a team in a meeting finally agrees on a mission statement, that clarity, that fixed meaning, that becomes the new internally generated hierarchy.
The Herrschaft.
Yes, the Herrschaft, that then guides and dominates all future decisions. Dominance isn't just done to us, it emerges from us when we let an idea get too fixed, too clear.
Which means the solution isn't to look for a better structure, but to find ways to keep the system perpetually unstructured.
And that's where the speaker's style, the irony, the ambiguity, the unsharpness becomes a crucial active methodology. The source argues these things weren't just rhetorical flair.
No, they're necessary conditions.
They're necessary conditions for maintaining a kind of thinking that avoids that premature closure. To stay heterarchical, You have to be willing to be provisional, to be uncertain. You have to joke about needing the audience's help to even get anything done.
It's an active definition of intellectual freedom, then, the perpetual refusal to let an idea become too fixed, too authoritative.
The moment you declare with absolute certainty, I know what I mean and I know what you mean, the hierarchy has dissolved. The process has stopped and the hierarchy of interpretation has solidified.
Okay, so let's bring together the key learnings from this dense, but I think ultimately really liberating deep dive.
First, remember that heterarchy is not simply the opposite of hierarchy. Opposition requires comparability, and heterarchy exists outside that conceptual frame.
Trying to define it hierarchically just leads to conceptual nothing.
Second, hierarchy is not the starting point. It's a product. It emerges when fluid, open, heterarchical processes become fixed and clear.
Structure is the result of solidification.
And third, the ultimate goal in this philosophical view is to try and dwell in that open, provisional dialogical state.
Using ambiguity and self-relativization as tools to resist the structural closure that inevitably leads to Herrschaft or dominance?
The source ends by saying the next topic has to be revealed by the heterarchical process itself, not by a choice imposed by authority.
That is a powerful final thought to carry into your own communication.
So we'd encourage you to actively listen in your next meeting, your next negotiation, even your next casual conversation. Don't just listen for what is being said. Try to identify the precise moment when the fluid, open exchange, the hierarchy of brainstorming, gives way to a fixed viewpoint or a conclusion. The new hierarchy.
Identify that crystallization point. Listen for when the conversation shifts from genuinely making meaning together to suddenly solidifying meaning into a definitive outcome. It happens faster than you think. Thank you for diving deep with us today.